you.
Great.
So I am going to go ahead and turn over the presenter controls to you.
Okay.
All right. And then there we go.
Okay.
All right, I see your screen. Thanks.
Okay, everything looks good. Okay, great. So I've got this slideshow here, and then what I'm going to do right in the middle of it is take a pause to go through live and look at Booklist Online and at Novelist for some different search strategies and things for young adult books. So hopefully I have most of my pages already pulled up, and so hopefully we won't have to waste any time with the flip through to the internet, and that should work. But I'll hopefully it's all going to go smoothly. So let's go ahead and get started. So as Louise said, I am Rebecca Vnuk. I'm the editor for collection management and library outreach with Booklist. And this program that we're doing today is part of the Reader's Advisory Conversations series of programs that we've done with Novelist and with Rails and Booklist. And this is a series of programs that is, well, self-explanatory, Reader's Advisory Conversations. If you've missed any of those, the good folks at Rails have recorded them all, which is really wonderful. If you go to booklistonline.com/live-events, you can see more information about the series and then all of the video links to the previous programs. They're all available on YouTube. And many of them, I think this is the second or third one that we've done as a webinar, and the rest of them were actually done in person and recorded live. So those are panel programs, and you can view the full panels there via video. They really turned out nicely. So hopefully you will go back and find some of those other programs and see the other stuff. We've talked about book blogging, we've talked about all kinds of reader's advisory things, we've talked about weeding. So take a look at that and see if there's anything else there reader's advisory wise that interests you. But on to today. So today we're going to specifically be looking at young adult reader's advisory. And this is the agenda for the program today. We're going to cover just some very basic reader's advisory. I'm assuming that most of you already know what we're talking about when we talk about reader's advisory. You either already do it, or you've had some training in it, or it's just something that's part of your regular workday. And I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about how reader's advisory in the broad sense relates to young adults. How is it different? How is it the same? What are some different tips and techniques that you can do? We're going to spend just a really short amount of time on passive reader's advisory, which is displays and bookmarks, and then a little bit of time talking about the challenges. What makes reader's advisory for young adults different than for adults? Then we're going to move into finding book recommendations, and that's where we're going to go live to Booklist Online and Novelist to look at the various resources that they have for young adults. The next section then is talking about adult crossover titles that are good for young adults and young adult crossover titles that are good for adults. And then we'll wrap up with some resources. I've got some professional reading books and some blogs to take a look at. So that's how we're going to smooth out this program today, looking at that stuff. So let's just start with a poll question. So how many of you that are watching this live, of course you can't do this later, how many of you watching this live have had any formal training working with either young adults or with YA materials?
All right, I launched the poll, so we'll give people a few seconds to vote. About half have voted so far.
Oh, great.
Probably give it about another 5 more seconds.
Sure thing.
All right. All right. The clicking has slowed down a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And I will share the results with everybody. So this is interesting. About 52%, Rebecca, say that yes, they have had some formal training working with young adults or YA materials, and about 48% have said no. So it's pretty much split in half.
Half and half. Okay. So I millions of years ago when I was in library school, I had a young adult materials class, and that was my formal introduction to working with YA materials. I also was lucky enough to have a regular reader's advisory class, but we didn't touch much on young adult materials then. So the funny thing about that was, so I had this one semester of YA materials, and then my first job out of library school, I ended up being the young adult librarian. And it was kind of by proxy because the Reader's Advisory librarian at that library also served as the young adult librarian. And I also was the youngest librarian on staff, so it seemed to be a fine fit for everyone. I think that a lot of times, depending on when you had your library school training or where you went, it's kind of a mix as to whether or not you're going to get training specifically working with young adults or not. But the point of everything that I want to say is I often find, and this is probably true for a lot of things with library school, you get your best training on the job. And every job that you're in is different, and every group of patrons that you're working with is different. So people who have not had any kind of formal training should not think of that as being something to worry about. It's definitely stuff that you can pick up and that you can take the reader's advisory knowledge that you already have and just kind of flip the switch over to young adults, especially these days. You'll see as we go on in the program, the things that I'm going to show you when it comes to YA materials, everything that I'm showing is available online. And it's all this kind of, you know, back when I was in library school, this is not the way that we did stuff. You had book lists, you had things that were printed out, you had professional reading lists, you had that sort of thing. I mean, and now anybody who's interested in young adult materials, it's very easy to go online and find lists and kind of do your own training. One of the things, the reason why I think we were most interested in offering this program today is, you know, Louise and I were talking about the next thing to do in the series, and she had mentioned that one of the things that Rails gets asked about a lot is training that's specific for young adults. And I agreed that that would be something great to do because I currently teach the Reader's Advisory course for the College of DuPage LTA program online. The first time I taught it was just this last spring, and I'll be doing it again in spring 2017. And it was very quickly apparent to me that the students in that class were really, really interested in young adult materials. We have everything that we learned that semester was based off of a benchmark list. So when we did the science fiction week, when we did romance for a week, when we did literary fiction, everyone had a list of benchmark books that they could choose from, and then they were allowed to choose something themselves. And there were 15 students in the class, and at least 7 of them every time, and it varied who it was, would ask me privately if they could choose a young adult book for their choice. And I started off by thinking, well, no, this is a book about adults, or I'm sorry, this is a class about adult readers advisory. YA is a separate class. And then I started thinking that, you know, well, wait a minute, this is what people are interested in. I really shouldn't stop them. So I ended up letting people use, they could use one of their choices, young adults. And it was interesting. Out of the 15 people in the class, most of them had already been working in libraries, and only 2 of them actually worked specifically with teen populations. The rest of them, this was what they themselves were interested in reading. And that really kind of opened my eyes, and I thought, you know, there's a lot of adults out there reading young adult materials for a number of different reasons, and these are library people even, and they, for their own reading in class, want to be able to use young adult books. So that really kind of, I guess I never stopped to think much about, you know, why we separate things, how we separate them, and what that means for Reader's Advisory. So I thought this program today would just be a good way to sort of talk to other people, other librarians who are interested in YA materials for any number of reasons. And just a good start. Again, this is a very, you know, it's a basic program today on Reader's Advisory and YA, but hopefully it will pique your interest and have you learn a few things about all of those YA books that are out there. So we'll move into talking about some basic Reader's Advisory. So, Reader's Advisory for teens. Is it really different from adults? That is a hard question. It's a yes and a no. To me, as a Reader's Advisor, I think that Reader's Advisory is general enough that it can be adapted to all kinds of patrons. You can't make assumptions based on anyone's age, gender, nationality, religion, anything you think you might know about them. So it's useful to remember that what actually makes Reader's Advisory different for young adults is really the titles that you're going to be suggesting. And that is what stumps most people who aren't as familiar with teen titles or crossover titles or teen authors. And we'll get to more of that at the back end of the program. What makes it different is the way that we talk to teens and the way that we approach them or become approachable to them. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the next couple of slides. But first, let's just go over a short amount of time here, going over some basics for Reader's Advisory. When you're talking to any patron, and especially I think for teens, it's great to try and make a good connection with that patron. Let them know that you're interested in listening to them, that you're interested in what they are interested in. And I'm going to say this more than once during this program. Young people are not going to understand the same appeal terms that we use. I think, as a matter of fact, that's probably true for most of our patrons, except for your really heavy readers and your kind of in-the-know library folks. When you talk to a patron, but especially to a teenager, and ask them, you know, what appeal elements interest you? They're going to look at you like you're talking Chinese to them. They're not going to know what pacing means. They're not going to know what mood means. They might know what the setting means, because that's the easiest one out of our appeal terms. But it's going to be difficult for them to have the kind of adult conversation. So try using descriptive phrases to communicate to teenagers. So, for instance, instead of asking, you know, what mood they're looking for, try and ask them, you know, how did you feel when what's the last good book that you read, or what is something similar that you're looking for, and ask them how they felt when they were reading it. How did it make them feel? How did they want to feel? So it's just a little bit about changing our language to be a little bit more casual. In all good Reader's Advisory transactions, you try to distill those appeal elements to match the reader with a book. And we're all familiar, hopefully, with the appeals that Joyce Sarix has come up with in all of her famous Reader's Advisory trainings. Pacing, mood and tone, setting, those are all things that are important to teens, even though they're not going to use those words. But I would also say, in general for teens, the book's genre is very important to them, even if they don't state it that way, and the authors are paramount. Genre is not something that a teen might come up and ask for. They might be savvy enough to come to the desk and ask for the latest dystopian fantasy, but it's more likely that they're just going to tell you about a book that they liked, and it's up to you to recognize the genre. And it's kind of funny that I chose dystopian fantasy, because that seems to be like 80% of what's being published right now for young adults. So as long as you're up on your dystopian fantasy series, you know, hey, you've got this YA thing licked. You're great. You know the basics. You can just adapt it to the audience. So the biggest thing, and again, we'll go over this as the program goes on today, the biggest thing is being able to identify books that are going to appeal to teen readers. So talking about those appeal elements, another way to look at those things is looking at them as doorways. Now, this is a concept that was popularized by Nancy Pearl, and she calls, instead of appeal elements, she calls them doorways, doorways into reading. So her doorways are story, character, language, and setting. And the reason that I chose to mention these today is because I think that framing books in that way can be a lot less intimidating to think of connecting to a teen reader. It's very easy to talk to someone about story or about characters. And so that's kind of just a more bottom line way of looking at these appeal elements. And what can be helpful to think of is that you can start off a Reader's Advisory conversation actually with not just a book, but with a movie or game or even music that that teen is interested in, just to get a sense of what might appeal to them. And listen to them to tell you what the hook is that draws them in to something. If this is a teen who likes a lot of romantic movies, you know, that's something that you can sort of think about that as that could be a doorway into a book, is something that's got a romantic feel or a love story in it. If you're looking at someone who, you're talking to someone who likes really action-oriented video games, you know, you can start extrapolating the things that excite them and turn that into a doorway into a book. So that's just another way to feel some ease with connecting your books, or connecting your readers with a book that might appeal to them. So the Reader's Advisory interview for teens. Now this comes from Heather Booth, who I will also mention her book again at the end of the program. Heather Booth is the Teen Services Librarian at the Thomas Ford Library in Western Springs, and she is a nationally known speaker on various young adult topics. She's also a reviewer here for Booklist. We love her very much, Heather Booth. She knows everything. And so she, her book, Serving Teens Through Reader's Advisory, in that book she talks about doing the Reader's Advisory interview specifically for teens. And I think that this is probably some of the most solid advice. It's actually great for any age, but it's really, it definitely is geared towards young adults. So I'm going to read over some of the things that she talks about in doing a Reader's Advisory interview specifically for teenagers. So she starts with small talk. Keep the interaction light and low pressure. Some phrases to try are, oh, I've seen a lot of people checking that one out. Is it good? Or, are you looking for a certain book I can help you find? Or, oh, these shelves, yeah, they're sometimes kind of messy. Let me know if I can help you find what you're looking for, or if what you need isn't there. It's a lot about approaching teenagers casually and just, you know, making it small talk, not feeling like you are an authority figure, you know, approaching them a little more gently than we might approach some adult patrons. Her next step is determining the requirements or the reading or interest level. So you'll want to ask if this is for an assignment or just for fun. Find out what grade that they're in. You can ask them, do you read a lot? Do you read a lot of things? And that's when you can then turn that into, well, can you tell me about a book or a movie that you've liked recently? The counterpoint to that is, have you read anything recently that you've totally hated? Do you want something quick to read, or are you looking to spend a lot of time with your next book? Once you kind of get those answers from your patron, then you can start to show them different examples. And they will let you know right away, you know, that they look at the cover and decide, oh gosh, no, that's not for me. Some of them are going to pick the book up and flip through it. They can tell, you know, teens are very into the size of the text and the page length and how much white space is on the page. Like, these are things that adult readers don't usually take the time to sort of look at. They'll just take the book that you're giving them and maybe they'll check it out, maybe not. But a teenager is actually likely to take that book and flip through it maybe while you're in front of them. So you can get a clue right there as to what they reject and what they accept. So you kind of make your pitch about, you know, why this book is a good one, why this might be what they're interested in, what you might know about that book already. And then repeat what you've gleaned from them. So when they tell you, oh, you know, I really liked the Twilight series, so repeat that back to them. So you're looking for books that are like Twilight, or you're looking for books that have a supernatural element to them, or you're looking for a book that, whatever the kind of thing that you've gotten out of them, so you can make sure, parrot that back to them, so you make sure you're on the right page with them. It's also kind of a good thing to sort of articulate those appeal factors that you know about a book, that you can tell them, oh, this is fast-paced. This one is a real tearjerker. Oh, this book is great for people who liked Stormbreaker. Oh, this book is totally realistic. Like, those are the appeal factors that they will catch on to and know exactly what you're talking about. So then Heather's next tip is to quickly go ahead and make your exit. I think with adults, we like to, of course, have them tell us as much as they can and spend their time with us and go over these things. And for teens, it's a little bit different. You have to give them their space. You have to be able to walk away, give them a couple of things to look at and then leave them be with it. So she says to offer them several quick choices and then leave them on a table or slightly pulled out on the shelf and just say to them, let me know if none of these work and I'll try again. And her other thing on that is to withhold your judgment. And that can be difficult to do. We'll talk about that on the slide when we talk about challenges for young adults. But definitely, there are ways that you can get around that. And it's the same way that you get around it when you're talking to adults. There are plenty of times when I've been on the desk and someone's asking me for an author that I don't care for. And of course, we don't let them know that. That's not what we're there to do. And so you use the same technique that you use when someone is asking you about an author that you're unfamiliar with, that you've never read. And that is to simply say, oh, do you know what? I don't know much about that author or about that book, but boy, this is popular. Oh, I get asked about that all the time. Oh, I've given this book to a lot of people. And that just kind of reassures them, because that often, and I think especially with teens, is what people are looking for, that sort of reassurance that what they're asking for is something good or could be something good. And you don't have to make that judgment call. It's nice to just say something like, oh yeah, this is a popular book, or that's a popular author. So once you've kind of left them with a couple of books to take a look at, then swing back around after a short time, offer more help if needed, and then Heather always likes to examine what was left behind to get a sense of what worked. So if you're leaving, 5 books out on a table, or if you've stacked up 3 for them to look at, and if they don't take them, you could kind of take a look and see, well, maybe this one was, too babyish for them, or this one, isn't quite current enough for them. So she says to swing back around and check back in and then take a look at what worked and what didn't work. So I'm looking to see in the chat if we have any questions. If there's any questions right now about Reader's Advisory, this is your chance to go ahead and ask them. I'm going to move into the next 2 slides just because they're super quick about displays. But if you've got questions, please go ahead and send them via the chat, and we'll answer them before we move on to the Booklist and Novelist portion. But here I've got, so just a little tiny bit about displays and passive Reader's Advisory. So passive Reader's Advisory, for anyone who doesn't know that term, that is Reader's Advisory that you do without interacting with the patrons. And so that is your displays, your bookmarks, your bibliographies, any kind of printed material, things that are on your website. What I really love the most about passive Reader's Advisory is that it is not only useful to the patron, it is equally useful to you as a staff member. If you have bookmarks available at your desk with read-alike titles or read-alike authors, that is just as helpful to you when someone's coming to ask you as it is for them when they don't come and ask you. I cannot tell you, just about every library that I've worked at, we had some form of written material for people, whether it was a stand of pre-done bookmarks or it was, a little 5x7 handout on something. And even in this age of being able to just look everything up online really quickly, people love taking that kind of tangible printed material with them. We were always refilling those kinds of things. And what I loved as a staff member was, putting those together, because it just made me, it sort of, filled your brain full of books when you have to go out and find all these different read-alikes for things. But even for the ones that I hadn't created myself, it's just a really, really convenient way when someone comes up to you and says, oh, I just finished the book Smile, or I finished Wonder, and I want to know, what else is just like that, and you're thinking, my God, I've never read that, I don't know that author, but hey, I know that we have a bookmark on that, and you can grab that, walk them to the shelves with it, find those books. So definitely, I always encourage people, if you don't already do that at your libraries, please go ahead and start doing it. And if you personally are not part of putting that together, absolutely volunteer for it. It makes you just so much smarter on the desk and so much more well-rounded. These are not necessarily books that you have to read yourself. You just know that that is where they fit into place as a read-alike. So that's my plug for doing, you know, some of that sort of passive reader's advisory and getting into that. So displays. I always like to encourage people, don't be afraid to mix some young adult into your adult books displays and vice versa as appropriate. Especially now that we know that so many adults are interested in reading young adult books themselves. Excuse me. Excuse me. You know, this is something that we're well aware of. So if it doesn't impede your shelving or your workflow, I highly recommend adding young adult books into your mix of adult book displays. Again, that's another thing that's helpful for the staff if they can just find something there and suggest it along with an adult book. So here on this slide and on the next, we've got examples of flowchart displays. So this isn't even doing a display with actual books. This is a display chart on the wall. And these flowcharts, I don't think you can see the picture very well, but it's, if you go to that link there, the bit.ly link for the YARA flowchart, this is from the blog Carissa in the Library, and it starts with, it's the various questions, which is, you know, if you like this, do you like that, do you want this, yes or no, etc., and then it flows down into books. And these are a really, really trendy thing right now, thanks to all of the lists and flowcharts that people see on sites like BuzzFeed, etc. Teens really gravitate to this kind of thing. So there's one, and here is another one. This is from the website bookish.com. And that's at the bit.ly link there, which is YA Fantasy Flowchart. They also have another one that's for contemporary young adult books. And you should be able to see this one a little bit closer. It's got, you know, if you like the Hunger Games or if you like Harry Potter, then it sort of asks, it sort of does a written out reader's advisory interview, right? It asks, you know, what are the things that you like about those books, and then starts to move down into a flowchart of other books to recommend. So I definitely think when this is over, go ahead and check those out and take a look and see if that's something you could copy or emulate at your library. So some challenges of doing young adult reader's advisory. Reader's advisory for youth does present some unique challenges. The challenges include dealing with things like approachability, materials, talking to teenagers, proxy requests, and fighting the urge to give them good books. So I'll go through these. So approachability. Many times, teens are reluctant to come to the desk or to ask for something to read. And as the reader's advisor, you need to be hyper aware of this and adjust your mannerisms and attitudes when working with teens. I think that, you know, this is one of those things that goes for anything in reader's advisory, that being approachable and smiling and looking people in the eye and really seeming interested in what they're telling you goes for any age, but double for young adults, because it's already probably hard enough for them to approach you at the desk and ask for something if they don't know you or have a relationship with you already. So really just be hyper aware of that and adjust how it is when you're talking to teens. Sensitive materials. So, you know, it can be very difficult for some of us as librarians to sort of fight the urge to protect young people from sex, drugs, offensive language that can be found in some books. And this can be a very tough issue in particular for school librarians who might have additional pressure from parents, other teachers, principals to provide what they're thinking of as wholesome literature, right? But, you know, in addition, what's offensive or off limits to one reader could be perfectly acceptable to other readers. So that is a really, really thorny area. We don't have to deal with that mostly when we're doing reader's advisory for adults. We figure that they are adults, they can make their own choices, they've certainly come across sex, drugs, and rock and roll before in their life, so this isn't going to be anything shocking to them. But with teenagers, you know, you don't want to be the one that is making any kind of a judgment call. And that can be difficult when you're unfamiliar with books. One of the things I will be showing you on Booklist Online is how to sort of read reviews to get a sense for what the book contains. I'll take just a really brief moment to mention, I don't know how many of you are familiar, this just happened recently in the last couple of weeks, the young adult review source Voya, Voice of Youth Advocates, recently found themselves in a very controversy, I guess, a very hard controversy online on social media because they had reviewed a book where they, and it really, to me as an editor, it just was edited poorly and could have been done better, but they referred to a book and called out both the bad language and the fact that there was a bisexual character together in the same sentence, and said that that was sort of a warning that, you know, librarians should be cautious of that when buying it. And those are really two separate things. You can't equate the two together. And so there was some controversy there, and that was a very clear example to those of us in the book world, librarians and reviewers both, that we need to be extra careful when we're talking about that stuff for young adults. It is not our place to judge what might be appropriate for them when it comes to anything, whether it's language or sexual situations or crime or drug abuse or anything like that. We have to be as neutral as we possibly can be when we're showing and talking about books that contain that sort of thing. And that leads into then the age appropriateness question. Molly Weta, who is a librarian at the Santa Barbara, California Public Library and member manager of YALSA's The Hub blog, notes that there has been a huge recent increase in more mature content in YA books. Many books are being labeled with 14 or even 15 or 16 and up as the target audience instead of 12 and up, which used to be the traditional age designation of young adult literature. So that, again, is where things like reviews can come in handy. I'll show you when we move over to Booklist. In our young adult reviews, we always put a grade range on them. And we don't just do, it used to be, we had these traditional designations of, you know, 6 to 9 and 9 to 12, and now we're trying to bleed that out a little bit, and some books end up being, you know, 6 to 8 and 11 and 12, and sort of that, to sort of spread that a little closer to the bone on age appropriateness. But again, age appropriateness can be a tough thing because you could be talking about, are they the right age to be reading it because of the content? Or are they the right age to be reading it just to understand it? You know, a 6th grader average has a different reading level than a junior in high school. So it might be that the language is too much for them or the comprehension level is not there. It might not necessarily be that the situations are not appropriate for their age. So these are tricky things that when you're talking about young adult books, those are just things to keep in the back of your head, is how do you approach that sort of thing, and what materials do you have on the shelves that you're familiar with, that you know how to do that age appropriately. The next thing that can be a challenge is difficulty articulating interest. So young people might know what they like to read, but they might not be able to express it to the librarian. And as I mentioned earlier, they likely also have no familiarity with appeal terms. So librarians that, you know, if we use our appeal jargon to them, it might think, you know, they're going to look at you like you're speaking another language and they don't understand what you're asking them. So definitely, this also holds true for our adult patrons. You know, a lot of them can't tell us what they like, and it's the whole dreaded, well, I just want something good to read. And so with teens especially, though, they're going to have a hard time telling you, and that's why, as I had suggested earlier, start talking about the things that they're interested in general, in pop culture and in their lives. Do they like things that are action-oriented? Do they like things that are more romantic? Do they like things that are realistic? Do they like fantasy? Finding out those interests, the more keywords that you can give them to go off of, the better. Now this one here is proxy requests. Is not something we usually have to deal with in an adult reader's advisory, but it comes up a lot for young adults. And proxy requests, this is when you've got parents, relatives, family, friends that come to the reference desk looking for a book for a young person that they know. It's not for them to read. So the problem that comes in there is serving that adult while also finding interesting materials for that young person who is not there to tell you what they're interested in. So, you know, the adult that comes to the desk to ask for books for their kid or for their niece or for their, you know, friend, they might not know or might not like what their kids are already reading. So assessing the interests there can be very difficult. And that, again, the more questions you can ask, the better. The more neutral you can be about things, the better. When we get to looking at some of the book lists later in the program, there are always these lists that come out constantly of, you know, the best YA books of the year. We're going to look at the YALSA website for all of their different award winners. Those are definitely things that you can pretty much feel safe offering by proxy. They've sort of been vetted, if you will. And then lastly, fighting the urge to give them good books, right? It's not our job as librarians, and especially not when dealing with young adults, to try and move people up to what we think they should be reading. It's not our job to move them to things that we think are higher level. It is our job to give them the things that they are looking for and the things that they are interested in. So that's just sort of a little gentle warning to fight that urge to make them read better things. So at this point, I'm going to move over online to looking at using Booklist and Novelist for different YA resources. So if anyone has any Reader's Advisory based questions, go ahead. Now is the time to type them in and ask them. But otherwise, we're going to move over to, let's see here.
Hi, Rebecca. I did get a couple questions.
Oh, great.
Hi, I got one question and one comment, and I did send them to you. I don't know if you can see them on your side, but the comment was suggested that an RA interview could help you or whoever's doing the advising understand the appropriateness of the material you're suggesting. So she said when you do that RA interview, that could help understand the appropriateness of the material. Yeah, so just want to share that comment. And then the other question, I don't know if you want to answer this here or if this might be an example you could work through. So we have a public librarian who is co-hosting a teen book club with their high school librarian, and it's a mixed group. Some of the group really likes to read fantasy and science fiction, and some of the group only likes to read realistic. So they have a challenge of trying to find a common ground. They've tried some crossover genres like historical fiction, but they're really looking for some ideas on what might appeal to these two different types of readers.
Oh, that's a good one. And I don't know that I can answer that off the top of my head, but as we do some of this searching on Booklist and Novelist, I will keep that in mind and see if there are solutions that we can come up with. I think that is tricky because when you're dealing with patrons who really like genre, whether it's mysteries or science fiction or fantasy, they tend to be very kind of singular in that way. Even your adult patrons do this as well. They like what they like, and that's all that they like. And I think what is interesting, I think I might have some, my brain is working as I'm talking. I might have a good suggestion to take a look at. There is, and I'll look at it when we go on to Booklist, which is what I'm going to do first. There's a whole new trend coming up right now in the publishing world, this idea of genre blends. I don't know if you're already familiar with that or not, but what we are seeing more and more is people, authors, who are known for writing in one genre or another, who, for whatever reason, have decided to move away from that genre that they've been in, and they do what we've been coining genre blends. And this is where you've got mostly realistic fiction that takes kind of a supernatural bend, right? Or a mostly realistic fiction that has some thriller elements, but we wouldn't necessarily necessarily classify it as a straight up thriller. We also see it a lot in romance. Like this is the best example of this, the most common example is this paranormal romance, right? Where it's not really a science fiction or fantasy book, but it's not really just a romance either. And I'll show you, this is a good time then to move over into Booklist Online. And let's see here, we did, see if I can find this. Here we go. Here's a feature article that we did 2 years ago with Megan McArdle, who wrote a book for ALA Editions on genre blending. And it's definitely super popular. I see a lot of this. One of the categories that I edit for here at Booklist is science fiction and fantasy. And we have a lot of them that come through with these thriller elements to them and with romance elements. And a lot of what we see a lot of literary fiction that tends to be, it's got magic in it. Whether it's magical realism or straight up magic, it's not your straight literary fiction, general fiction. So if you want to take a look at this article here, you can see what I've just done. This is Booklist Online, booklistonline.com, and our feature articles, you can look at select feature articles even without being logged in with your subscription. So if you don't have a subscription to Booklist, you can still view the things that I'm showing you today. You won't be able to see all of the reviews that I'm going to be pointing out, but you will be able to look at articles. And now I can't test this because I'm automatically logged in, but if you come across something, a feature article that you're interested in looking at that doesn't come up and you don't have a Booklist Online subscription, please feel free to email me. My email address is going to come up at the very end of the program, but right now I will tell you it is rvnuk@ala.org, and I can make that public for anyone to look at. But here is an article that if specifically this person that's asking about how do we find books that fit both. Take a look at this genre blending article, and you'll see that she sort of talks about different genres and how things are being blended into other genres. So take a look at that. The other thing I'm going to, and here at the bottom, which she's got her book there, The Reader's Advisory Guide to Genre Blends. So that is more of a background on this that kind of goes through it and gives good book suggestions. The other thing, let me see if this works here. I believe if you use that as a keyword to look at reviews, there might be a dash in there. Let's see if anything comes up. All right, let's try that again. Genre blend. Okay, so doing genre blend, genre-blend, brings up 195 reviews that we've published that use that keyword in the review. So these are books that we're talking about that we consider genre blends. So you can take a look at some of those. So hopefully that will help with that. So looking at Looking at Booklist Online, I wanted to show you some of the different things that you can do on Booklist Online to help you identify good crossover titles for Reader's Advisory, and just how to, I want to spend a couple of minutes looking at how to read a review to help you in Reader's Advisory. And I need to back up a little bit and talk about why this sort of thing is important. So, in Reader's Advisory in general, especially in young adult Reader's Advisory if it's not something that you do on a regular basis. One of the things that people expect out of you as the librarian, these patrons that come to the desk, I talk about this in almost every RA training that I do. People think that you are the expert. I mean, you are the expert, but people think that you have read every book on the shelf, right? And that you're familiar with every author. And I call that having your brain full of books. And the patron doesn't need to know that you have not read all of those books. So what I find myself telling people more and more, and it's not just because I work at Booklist, but it is highly influenced by that. What I find myself telling people more and more is use your review sources as ways to be familiar with books that you are not going to read, that you have not read, that you're not likely going to read. There is no way, even if it's something you are interested in a genre, a style, an author, there is no way you're ever going to read all the books you want to. And there's no way you're going to remember them all. So looking at reviews can be a perfect way to just familiarize yourself with authors and with genres and with styles of books and things that appeal to people. I'm going to show off some of the different things that we do in Booklist online review, or Booklist reviews in particular. And let's see here. Let's find let's find a young adult review. So here's a way that we can browse reviews. I should go through what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So on Booklist Online, there are a number of ways to search. We've got the quick search here. We've got the advanced search here, which gives you, if you wanted to look at different categories of books, but all kinds of different ways that you can search them. And you can refine them by the audience, etc. You can go by a grade range, which is also helpful when we're talking about YA stuff. But down here at the bottom, just kind of this browsability, is I'm looking here at youth fiction in particular. And we're going to look at older readers because that's our young adult stuff. So looking at this, I'm going to pick a recent one. Oh, and I had one up. Let's see here. So here are the elements of a book review to look at that will help you become familiar with what this book is about. And this is kind of what's nice about having a book review resource online like this, if your library has a subscription to Booklist Online, or when we get to Novelist, I'll show you things in there as well, is this is something that you can really quickly take a look at while you're talking to a patron, while they're in front of you at the desk, and just say, you know, hold on, let me take a look at that book. So this young adult comes up to you and says she likes this author, or maybe she read this book, The Truth of Right Now. You can be quickly typing that in and quickly bring it up, and just, you know, it's not a very long review. It's something you can absolutely skim and glance over and get a sense for this. So just looking at this, you can tell, okay, this is a story that's set in a high school. So that's great for kids who have come up and said that, you know, they give you some titles that you recognize as being set in high school and what it is that they like about that. So there's this new kid here, and he's kind of artsy, and there's these, you know, the two characters are getting together, and oh, and then we see that, you know, the girl is white and the boy is black, so we're going to have some of that going on in there, and it's, you know, very contemporary. And then, you know, we use keywords in our reviews. We've got, you know, it's melodramatic, it's got a focus on racial injustice, there are subplots, and then boom, right here at the end, we're leading you to other books that are similar. We're even telling you, hand this to fans of blank and blank. So that's something that, you know, a patron comes up to you and tells you, I like books set in high school. Well, if you had done a keyword search for high school, change that to reviews, and for books for youth, this is going to come up in that list. So this is something you could quickly pull up. The other thing I'll point out here is just this right here, that it's, you know, we tell you this is for grades 9 to 12, so this is going to be a high school book. So those are sort of those clues for you to take a look at and sort of pay attention when we're looking at reviews to do reader's advisory. I also have, let's see, I wanted to show you, so that's an actual young adult review. I'm going to show you in particular. In our adult section, what we do when we're reviewing adult books, when we come across those that we think are suitable for young adults, we do this right here. It's called a YA repeat. and that's a repeat note at the bottom of the review. We are recommending this adult book for young adult readers, and here is why. So this happens to be nonfiction, and it's a review that I wrote and said, oh, definitely, this would do great with all, kids that are into sports, even kids who aren't into sports. This is definitely, it's accessible reading, it's interesting. So that, look for these YA notes, and these appear in the print magazine as well, so it's not just an online feature. So if your library has a print subscription to Booklist, you will find those notes all throughout the adult section. I'm going to show you a fiction one as well. This is another one that I did, My Best Friend's Exorcism. And so this is a book about teenagers in the 1980s. It's horror. And so I gave it also, we have this other designation here of YA mature readers. And the only reason that we're calling this mature, there's no bad language, there's no sex, but there's horror, and some of it's kind of gross. So we're definitely suggesting that to the older teen readers who like horror, and we give it a YA note there. So again, this is a print, this note appeared in print, so if you were just browsing through the magazine, your eye would catch on those different YA notes. So definitely something to be looking at when you're looking for adult books that appeal to young adults. Do that while you're reading the reviews. So something else I want to show you on Booklist Online. There are a number of features that we do in every issue. The two that we do that are most common are our top 10 lists and our core collections. And I always suggest these to doing readers for those who do readers advisory, because again, this is a great way for you to sort of fill your brain full of books without having actually read all of those books. And what's particularly nice about these features is in the print version of Booklist, they appear, the top 10s at least, appear on one page, so that's something that you can copy off and leave at the desk. If you have a subscription to Booklist, it now includes the digital version, which is the PDF, so you can just print that right out. They're really these nice handy lists where we have done the work for you. So looking specifically at youth, here's an example of one that just is from this month actually, top 10 short story collections for youth. And again, it's recent titles, and we've just got a quick annotation there, very easy to pick up and read, and right here you can see we've got these different grade designations. Now we don't, this one I think happens to be all, oh, we've got some younger ones here. We don't necessarily do all of our lists for teens specifically or for young adults, but they will always have that grade designation, so you can pick the ones out of the list that are specific to the readers that you're looking for. And then we also link, you can see here, we link those back to the full review of the book then. And I'll show you how to get to those. If you simply go right up there to the quick search feature and type in top 10, and it's 10 is the number, not spelled out. And we're going to switch that to books for youth, since we happen to be talking about youth here, but you can also, do this just for readers advisory stuff for your adult stuff too. And if you go to that, then it brings up all of these different top 10 lists that we've done. And there's at least one every month, twice a month, one every issue, I should say, because each issue that we do is a spotlight issue. So you can see November, we had the spotlight on arts coming up. October 15th was the first novel spotlight. October 1st for adults was food, and for youth was series. The September 5th issue is our romance spotlight, etc., etc. So my suggestion to you is to absolutely, if you have the chance to go onto Booklist Online and look at these things and familiarize yourself with the books that we're talking about there. Another thing that we do in our features for both adults and for youth is called core collections, and this is something you get to simply by typing core collection into the quick search box and books for youth, and that comes up with all of the different core collections that we have done. You can consider this to be If the top 10 is top 10 current books that we're talking about, core collection is sort of, it's current and older books. It's a nice mix of things that we think libraries ought to have on their shelves. So here's a recent one, Groundhog Days. And you know, middle and high school are breeding grounds for regret, so they make perfect fits for this narrative device. So here are a number of different books. These happen to be middle grade and young adults, but again, you can tell that there from that grade designation, there's a 4 to 6, but right here is a 10 to 12. And here we've got a 9 to 12, or a 4 to 7. So we have all these different grade designations, and then just a quick annotation of these books. So that is our core collection lists. That can be really, really super useful for building that brain full of books that you all need to have. So, moving away from Booklist, let's move over to Novelist. Now, I know that the people who are listening live today, I believe, are all Illinois librarians. And here in Illinois, we are very fortunate that the library systems pay for everyone to have access to Novelist. And those of you listening after, if you are not a Novelist library, we can get you hooked up with Duncan and his team over at Novelist to get you a trial for that and give it a try. Novelist is really a very cool database for doing reader's advisory and book searches. And so because I feel right now like I'm working with these, with people who are already who have access, I'm not going to show how to log in or what to do, but I'm going to show you how to use it specifically for young adult readers advisory. So one of the things, this is just one of the opening pages, and you can, I'm going to show you really quickly the ways that you can sort of sort it into the things that you're looking for. So they have all kinds of designations here that you can choose. Here in the middle, we can specifically, whoops, I bet I'm probably logged out at this point, maybe not. Oh, give me just a second. I might have to log out and log back in. Yep. All right. Luckily for me, I have my library card number memorized, so I can just get right back in. Ta-da! So back into Novelist, you can move things straight over to teen, and I specifically wanted to show you, let's see, 2016 teen faves so far. And so see, they create these lists for you, and then when you go into, it gives you the different reviews of a book. It gives you ways to search for books that are similar. So like this one, they're calling it emotionally intense, realistic fiction. So going back, let's see here. Oops. These are, oh, and these here are for grades 7 to 10. Good thing to note. But there's a number of different ways to go ahead and browse different genres and things. One of the things that I wanted to show, especially for right up here, we have, one of the nice things about Novelist is they have a lot of reader's advisory resources to check out, and some of them right here are specifically for working with youth. So we have a number of different titles that they have read-alikes for, or what I was looking at earlier is this here, tell me more about matching readers with books, and my kids have to read. So these are for teens. So these are these different book lists that they put together, and they've got a great team of folks over there at Booklist who are professional librarians who go through these and create these bibliographies of books. And so they sort of put this stuff together. So if you know that you've got teens that are asking you for biographies or things about celebrities, here's a whole list that you've got right there that you can familiarize yourself with looking at that. Another thing to look at in their reader's advisory section, they have all of these trainings and articles that you can read on doing Reader's Advisory. And one of the things that I specifically wanted to show is found right over here under Learning About Genres, the Adult Reading Roundtable Young Adult Fiction List. So this is a list that is, it's a workbook basically, and it's for library staff to do their own self-paced training on young adult reading. So I'm going to show it to you. I downloaded it earlier there, so it should come up. This is the second edition. It's from 2015. And this is, again, here in Illinois, you should all be familiar with the Adult Reading Roundtable. And if you're not, then you should go to arrtreads.org and learn about them. And what they have put together here is this workbook of different authors. And it's a self-training tool where you look at it and you mark off, I have read this author, I have read about them, I've heard of them, or I've never heard of them. And it will go through, I don't want to spend too much time on this because you all have this available if you've got Novelist, and you can download this and look at it. But here are a number of different categories that they use. And then what it looks like is this. So in the action category, they have identified these, let's see, 3, 6, 9 authors that are popular in libraries and are current in libraries and that people are asking for. And so you, as you're going through your training, you mark off whether or not you've read them, read about them, heard of them, or never heard of them. And the idea is when you get to the people that you have never heard of or you've only read about, that is when you go and seek those books out, or you at least seek out reviews of those books by those authors so that you can become more familiar with them. So anyone who finds themselves you know, getting questions about some of these authors and you're thinking, my gosh, I have never read a Laurie Halse Anderson book in my life. I don't know anything about her. This is a great way to familiarize yourself with these authors, and some of them can indeed be read-alike authors, and it's, like I said, self-paced training. So this is an excellent way to start at the beginning, sort of, and find out more about young adult authors. So I encourage everybody to go and take a look at that. They also have one for adults as well, but since we're talking about YA here, I just wanted to point that out really quickly. One of the other things, Novelist has Book Squad, which is a service that this here you can sign up with them, and they send you emails about different Reader's Advisory topics and things that are going on with Novelist. And so you can specifically choose to look at, to get emails from them about young adult, their teen lit connection. So I absolutely recommend taking a look at Novelist's Book Squad and signing up for their emails. And this is the blog that they've got on Novelist. And so here I just wanted to point out they update these, and this is called For Fans Of, and so this is another thing that's, you know, the stuff that teenagers are talking about these days, stuff that they're interested in. We've got a little search screen here just to show you the recommended reads lists. If you go to teens, and then right under that is that For Fans Of, and look at all these different things that they've got there. They've got Doctor Who is on there, Empire, Star Wars, Taylor Swift, Night Vale, all of this stuff that today's teens are into that I am so unaware of. I'm obviously not one of today's teens. But hey, I don't need to be, because Novelist has put together these book lists for me. So just wanted to point that out as a way to become, again, more familiar with the stuff that your teenagers are asking you for. So, moving back to the slideshow. Are there any questions, since we can easily go back and do a quick search on Booklist or on Novelist? Are there any questions about either one of those? Oops.
Rebecca, I
Yes.
did get one question.
Okay.
Going back to the top 10 list
Yes.
that Booklist provides, are those available in a bookmark form?
Oh, that's a good question. They are not, but I can tell you, let me see here. if we go to one, and we go, you know what, I can't say that I've done this recently. When you go to print it, oh, and of course now it's not going to let me do it because I've got too many windows open. You can see here, right, that it's kind of narrow like that.
Sure.
Yeah, so you can, when you print it, you could definitely, copy that out and make it kind of one of those wide bookmarks like that. Okay. In the print version, now let me show off the digital edition. Why don't I do that? Showing up, is this going to let me do it easily? Let's take a look here. Yay, very easily. And we've got it, whoops, got it right over here. Top 10 arts books for youth. Why aren't you letting me do it? I wonder if I have to look at it just in an app. Well, here we go. Oh. Well, I'm having a little trouble with this right now, but let me see if I can go back to an earlier one. Here's our spotlight on first novels. Oh, stop that. Oh, I see. It's letting me do the preview of it. Yep, it's not going to let me do it live, but if you are familiar at all with the print version of Booklist, they take up about half of a page, our top 10 lists. It's a column, and it's all on one sheet, so you could definitely print that out and shrink it down to bookmark form, or you could hand it out, it's kind of that sort of maybe 4 by 8-ish printout. We absolutely encourage you, if you've got the subscription to Booklist, we encourage you to hand those out to your patrons and to use that. That's one of the reasons why we were so keen on doing a digital edition, so that libraries could feel free to print out things and share those with their patrons. So definitely, if you've got that subscription, use it and hand it out to people and use it at the desk. So did that answer the question, I hope?
All right. Well, if the person needs to follow up, they will. But that's all I've got right now. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. Sure thing. Okay, so then let's move on. So, I just wanted to make sure that I hit these points, and I did during the live thing there, was to look for that YA repeat. And here is a little bit from Novelist on their search strategy. This, again, is the sort of thing you can pull up in Novelist when you're looking at the Reader's Advisory section there. It tells you how to do a search strategy within Novelist. And this one happens to be particularly for tweens. So moving right along, let's talk a little bit about adult crossover titles for young adults. So here is the thing with this. If I was going to give you a list of 100 books that are good crossover titles, this would be a 4-hour webinar, and I'd be exhausted. And really, why do that? Many, many lists exist out there, so I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here to talk about specific titles. But what we're going to do is take some time to travel through different places online to get good lists of crossover titles. So, of course, excuse me, the mother of all book lists for adult titles to recommend to young adults is the YALSA Alex Awards. And those are found there at the URL on the screen, ala.org/YALSA/Alex-Awards. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to mute myself for just a second so I can cough. Hang on just a sec. Okay, pardon me, I'm back. So the Alex Awards, hopefully you're already familiar with that, even if you're not a young adult librarian. So the Alex Award is given to 10 books written for adults that have special appeal to young adults, ages 12 through 18. The winning titles are selected from the previous year's publishing year, and the Alex Awards were first given starting in 1998 and became an official ALA award in 2002. So the great thing, if you go to ala.org/YALSA/Alex-Awards, you will see, what is that, nearly 20 years worth, back to 1998, nearly 20 years worth of great crossover titles, adult books suitable for young adults. So here's the 2016 winners. Oh goodness, I'm sorry. Did you not hear any of that? I thought I took
heard
myself.
It.
Oh, okay.
You're fine.
Okay. I was like, oh no, I was talking and then I noticed it was muted. So anyway, the YALSA Awards, or the Alex Awards, are here. Here's the 2016 winners. And then here we have the fun thing to remember is there are not only 10 winners every year, but then there are all of the nominees. So here are some selected titles from the 2016 long list, which can also be found at that Alex Awards-2016-nominees URL. So if you're looking for good adult titles to recommend to young adults, there's really no better place to go than the Alex Awards list. And again, I'm hopefully was unmuted while I said that this has been since 1998, so we've got nearly 20 years worth of book lists available at the YALSA section of the ALA website. So we've got time for one more quick poll here. Do you like to read young adult novels and actively add them to your reading list? It'll take just a second for people. Louise will bring up the poll, and then we'll just to get a sense for if you yourself like to read young adult books.
All right. Yep, the poll is launched. Give people a few seconds to vote. They're being real quick on this one.
Oh, good.
All right. We've already had about 75% vote, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out and show everybody the results. And overwhelmingly, 90% of the attendees do like to read YA and have them on the reading list.
Aha! Well, that's fantastic.
Awesome.
So the reason that I ask is because it's apparently controversial to do so. I think that's terrible. In 2014, I don't know if you guys remember this, when the literary world erupted over the argument of whether or not adults should be reading young adult novels. Now, there was this particularly obnoxious Slate article that I've got the link to there that had all of us who follow Betty Rosenberg's first rule of reading, which is never apologize for your reading tastes. It had us going practically apoplectic, and the author of this column decided that, you know, young adult literature is dumbed down, it's not written for your age level, you should be embarrassed by that, and librarians everywhere went nuts, and I was one of them. That was just, as a reader's advisory person, that goes against everything that we believe in, that you should be reading anything you're interested in, and there's no reason for anybody to be embarrassed by reading any books, especially not YA. So adults looking for young adult books. At the 2015 Children's Book Summit, the market research company AC Nielsen reported that 80% of young adult fiction is bought by adults. So of course, it's likely that some of that is being bought by adults for the young people in their lives, but you know, there's no way to know. We don't ask people when they come and check stuff out if they're reading it or if they're giving it to kids that they know. But we can assume that is a huge number that's being consumed by those outside the intended demographic. There are any number of reasons why adults gravitate towards young adult novels. They tend to be shorter. They tend to be dramatic in storyline or in pace. They tend to be entertaining rather than taxing. Many readers also enjoy the coming-of-age aspect of YA fiction, and they love reading books that connect them with their younger selves or those moments that define us. So there are any number of reasons that adults like to pick up YA books. So let's look at some good sources for great YA books suitable for adult reading. The Time list of the 100 best young adult books of all time is available there at the URL on the screen. And then a nice recent list is this paste list there. That's I did a bit.ly link for that, which is just bit.ly paste YA. And that is very recent. It's 16 best young adult books of 2016. So those are some great suggestions. Again, I didn't think that this webinar was the place to reinvent the wheel when you can easily find these things online. And then you can go back and use Novelist or Booklist to go find reviews of these books if they're books or authors that you're not familiar with. So I'll leave that up for just a second for you to get down those URLs if you would like. Here's another compilation from the website Refinery 29. This is from last summer, but still, it's a huge list of books that they're considering best new YA books. So again, just a good way for you to get familiar with some good young adult books that will appeal to adults. And then to finish up, I'd like to show you some resources. So professional reading books can be really, there's so much that's available on the web, but some of these professional reading books really serve as great handbooks when you've got the time to take a look and learn more about working with young adults. So we've got the Michael Cart's just came out last month, his young adult literature from romance to realism. This is the 3rd edition of his book. So Michael Cart, he's a Booklist reviewer and writes feature articles for us as well. He's a YA expert, and he has updated this classic reference. He traces the history of young adults as a developmental period in human growth, as well as the history of writing for that age group, and the rise of the distinctive literature known as YA. I also wanted to point out, starting, I believe we're launching it right after midwinter, 2017 marks the 50th anniversary of young adult books, actually. Most people consider the publication of S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders to be the first young adult novel, the first book that was specifically written for that age group and marketed to that age group, and it is turning 50 in 2017. I won't even talk about how old that makes me, although I think we all read it in high school or junior high, no matter what age we are. So Booklist is going to be doing a whole year worth of concentrating on young adult celebrations. So look for that coming up from Booklist. And so to go hand in hand with that, we have the new look at young adult literature from Michael Cart. And then we also have, I just would like to showcase his top 200 books, 2 decades in review, that's from 2013, and then Booklist's 1,000 best young adult books since 2000, that's from 2014. Again, these are great ways for you to become familiar with young adult literature if you do not read it or recognize most of it. And then the other 2 books on the screen there are from, again, our friend and everyone's favorite YA librarian, Heather Booth. So in her first book there, Serving Teens Through Reader's Advisory, she brings together her experience working with an active Reader's Advisory department as well as her knowledge of teen library patrons to cover all aspects of Reader's Advisory for this age group. The book it's from 2007, so it's almost 10 years old at this point. So the reading suggestions within are out of date, but all of the advice within is still sound, and this book should really be on your reading list if you are working with teens or interested in working with teens. She's got all kinds of tips for people who do not consider themselves experts in teen fiction or having enough training in it. So Heather is also the co-author, along with Karen Jensen, of the Whole Library Handbook Teen Services. And this is a recent publication, it's 2014, provides a comprehensive introduction to the background and day-to-day realities of teen librarianship. Again, it's filled with all kinds of tips for advocacy and reader's advisory, marketing, etc. So those are all books you should take a look at for further resources. I also wanted to make sure everyone is familiar with the wealth of information that's on the YALSA website, which is ala.org/YALSA. And we have, I mentioned those Alex Awards, but there are also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other awards that you can find, which is really for people who are unsure of what to suggest to people because they're worried about age appropriateness or worried about reading levels or anything like that. This is definitely a great resource to get yourself familiar with. These are all things that have been voted on by teams of expert librarians. These are all things that are highly recommended. So the YALSA's Book Awards and book lists are a wonderful place to get yourself familiar with. I also wanted to show you one of the things they have here on that site is their Bookfinder app. And that is something you can quick put on your phone and like take that out into the stacks and just start, you know, when you're talking to a teenager, you can just bring them up something. I mean, how cool would that be to be like, oh, they're asking you for a book and you're not familiar with it, so you go ahead and you type that in and you can show them, oh, this book here, and you can start talking about it from there. So it's just kind of a neat little thing that they've done recently is their Teen Book Finder. And then lastly, it looks like we're coming right up to time here, I wanted to point out some really good teen book blogs. As much as I love professional resources like Booklist and like Novelist, I have to always give a shout out for the people who are doing blogging because they have the ability to be so much more timely than any print publication can be. They, a lot of these blogs are updated, if not every day, then at least every week. And these are some of the ones, if you go back to that live events page, you'll see my colleague Karen Keefe and I do a whole program on readers, writers, books, and blogs, which is what we consider our favorite book blogs. And here's a selection of the YA book blogs from that. We've got Forever Young Adult, Guys Lit Wire, which is YA books specifically for young men. The Hub, which is Yalsa's blog. Green Bean Teen Queen, who is a young adult librarian. She's very fun and really knows her stuff. Bookends, which is on the booklistreader.com, which is our booklist blog. That is two librarians specifically talking about youth topics and often young adults. And then the Teen Librarian Toolbox, which is from SLJ, and Heather Booth is a contributor to that. So that rounds it up for today. My email is right there on the screen, rvnuk@ala.org, and I'm always happy to chat with people afterwards at any time. If I don't have the answer you're looking for, hopefully maybe I have someone I can send you to that would know that answer. But that wraps it up for the program here, but we do have about 5-ish minutes left for questions if there's any further questions to take at the end here.
All right, great. Yes, we've got a few more minutes for questions. I don't have anything coming in yet, but we can give folks a few minutes just to type those in. I do have a comment from somebody who says, I don't think I can put in as much feeling as her exclamation points, but she says, AART is awesome. Rebecca rocks.
Oh, well, thank you.
Karen Keefe rocks. Great program. Yeah,
thank you.
So, yeah, so just kudos to all of you and what you do. And
thank you.
I'm getting a bunch of thank yous. So I think, oh, somebody said that I rock too, so thank you.
You do indeed rock.
Yeah,
it's always a pleasure to do things with you guys, especially with you, Louise. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, we're happy to do this. Rebecca, thank you again for your time today. I always learn something new from you, and I'm sure everybody in the audience learned something as well. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of you. We did record today's session, so pending any technical difficulties, I hope to get that posted, and I will alert you within the next day or so. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. I don't see any questions, so thank you again, Rebecca.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day. I'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you.